Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor at USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked, here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. We're not going to be taking calls today because Rich and I have a lot of things to discuss, mostly Rich. And Rich, I wanted to mention what happened when you and I were on the phone last night. What do you think?
Sure. Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead.
So Rich and I were talking, just, solving the world's problems. And all of a sudden we heard this click. And it just got dark. And here at the farmhouse in Missouri. And the lights went out in the room where I was talking with Rich. But the phone stayed connected. I thought, what the heck is this all about? Our solar system shut down. Well, what I found out was, it took me several minutes, went out to the solar system and so the phone still worked. And, but all the electricity in the house was down. And here's what happened. So there are three kinds of systems. There's an off-grid system, which Rich Scheben has, which means that there's no electricity provided by the utility. None. Then there's an on-grid system, which requires the grid in order for your solar system to work. But that kind of a system has no battery backup. There's no battery bank at all. So if the grid goes down, you've got nothing. You only generate electricity and sell it back to the grid if the grid is up. So it must be grid connected because it requires a 60 cycle synchronization frequency in order for that system to work. The kind we have is both. We have an off-grid system. I can throw a switch and we can be off-grid. I can throw a switch and we can be on-grid, or I can throw a switch and we can be on-grid and off-grid. And what happens is with ours, I can use the grid as my battery bank. And I can use, so if we're generating extra electricity, I can sell it to the grid. If we're not generating extra electricity, I can buy it from the grid. But on a rolling 30-month period, once a month, we settle up with the utility company, and either if we use more electricity than we provided them, we pay for that. If we sell them more than we use, then they pay us. So what happened last night was there was a power failure in our area, probably a 20-mile radius, and we found out by placing a telephone call to the electric company, and they said, yeah, we know all about it, and it affects, these towns and the surrounding area. Well, because the sun, and there's a reason why I'm telling you all this, so if you're thinking about solar, you need to know these kinds of things. Because the sun was so dim for several weeks, our battery bank was at a state of less than full charge. So last night, it had less than full charge. The freezers were running, the refrigerators were running, the cows were drinking water. And the cows drink about 3,000 or more gallons of water a day. So we have to pump 3,000 gallons of water from the well. We own the well. But it takes a lot of electricity to pump 3,000 gallons of water. And so, we're running the computers and we're doing all the things that most people do. Dishwasher, washing machine, all that. And it's okay as long as the grid was up. Well, because our battery bank was in a state of discharge and the grid went down, we didn't even know there was a power failure in the area because our solar system just kept humming along and provided electricity. Everything was fine. But when the batteries got to a predetermined level, which I say when they get to this point, shut everything down. Well, it shut everything down. And because it shut everything down, I had to figure out exactly what happened. What happened was we ran our battery bank down, to a very low state of charge. It provided everything it could, but I didn't know we had a power failure. And that's one of the benefits of having a solar system that's either off-grid or hybrid, because you can ride through these storms. But if you've got a heavy load like we do here running the farm, and we don't generate enough electricity during the cloudy days to provide enough current to run the farm, then if the grid goes down, you're toast. So that's what happened, because we were fine until we ran out of battery power. So I just wanted to share with you those thoughts. So if you're thinking about a solar system, think carefully about on-grid, off-grid, hybrid, and the size of your battery bank and the load. And you need to shed the load. Now, we just have more freezers than we should, be running at one time. But that's just currently what we decided to do. If we have to, we'll just start up the generator. But I don't like doing that, because our generator uses about a half a gallon of fuel an hour. And I don't like doing that, unless we have to. So that's what happened, Rich. Any comments?
No, I think it was well said. I mean, I can offer some suggestions, but for the size of, your usage, I really couldn't come up with a better plan B than what you really have, because you're pulling up water, which takes a lot of power. I have what I call a hobby farm here, so I do everything with a garden hose, and I run my generator, and I probably average, and that includes during the summer months when I water my garden with my generator, I probably average maybe, 10 gallon. Well, probably that's high. Probably a little over 5 gallons a month of gas to show the difference in lifestyles that we have. Everything I do is on a minimum basis. We account for every drop of water, even gray water. So we're about as green as you can possibly get. And I'm a big proponent of off-grid living. I give quite a few tours for people who maybe they read my book or heard me give a talk or heard me on a radio show, and they want Plan Bs. People are very desperate for Plan Bs right now, because I think a lot of people are doing more reading and research, Vince. People are, seeing the corruption behind the scenes and seeing the phony excuses that's been given out by the powers that be. One example, I'm just going by one of the commercials that just occurred before we went on air when they were talking about the stimulus and how this is going to cure poverty. No, it's not going to cure anything. It's going to basically make less confidence in the Federal Reserve note. But you have to look at the underlying reasons of why they're saying this. What this is really going to do is postpone poverty, maybe for a year. And that's going to be their window of opportunity. But you got to look at all the peripheral reasons that they don't say or admit to, like demonizing alternative money, currency, barter, and trying to make the Federal Reserve note last as long as possible, which we have to remember is debt-backed. Debt-backed means more control by the elite. And what they're doing is buying time so they can usher out a Fed coin, which is going to be a cryptocurrency centralized coin, which is going to have nothing to do with supply and demand. It's going to basically be, well, you take this poison medicine, you take this poison food, you take this poison water, you don't leave your house, you wear a mask, and then we'll give you a couple of pennies. That's how that's going to work. And it's also a tool for temporarily buying votes for the poor. So we have to look at everything that's been happening. We have no velocity of money because people are afraid and they're holding on to whatever dollars they have, and they're trying to save it or trying to invest it or trying to grow it. And that's one of the reasons why housing is going through the roof, especially in rural America, because people want to buy a place that they can have under ownership, maybe have a little land where they can maybe raise a few animals, raise a garden, have a lifestyle, maybe cut down some trees for heat. That's what people are looking for. So they also want, with this Fed coin, they want to create a timeline of printing money, and they're going to usher in negative interest rates as well. So you're going to get a chunk of change, you're going to have a timeline to spend it, and if you don't spend it, they're going to confiscate it, possibly, most likely through negative interest rates. So what they want to do is inflate debt and control the people on what you can spend depending on how much submissive conformity you show the powers that be. And at the same time, the big corporations, especially big pharma, the banks, the lawyers, the judges, the courts, they're going to continue to have liability immunity. And that's it in a nutshell. So we have to look at decentralizing in every way, shape, and form. We have to think about going back to the simple things in life: food, water, shelter, energy, build skill sets, be self-sufficient. We have to realize what the agenda is, which we've discussed in great detail over the past several months, many times, and we have to go back to relearning those old 19th century skills. You know, whether it be off-grid living, which is dovetailed with 21st century technology, because everything off-grid today is electronic. You know, solar panels have probably 2 ounces of silver in each panel on average. We have to go back to the soil and figure out, where does our nutrients and vitamins really come from? It comes from the soil. It doesn't come from the pretty vegetables you buy from around the world that's filled with glyphosate, pesticides, and everything else, and heavy metals. It comes from what you grow because of your knowledge. You know, are you drinking municipal water with fluoride, chlorine, and pharmaceutical drugs and hundreds of poisons and chemicals? You have to determine what direction you want to go in, but you have to relearn those old skills. We can't throw out technology, but we have a major imbalance between nature and technology. And it's just like an imbalance if you have a connected hybrid grid, like Vince was talking about, solar system. You have to create the balances, because just like a bank, whether it holds money, just like batteries that hold amps and voltage, you have to figure out that balance in life. And this is kind of a metaphor analogy, but if we don't gain those skills, we're going to continue to give free lunch to the elite, and we will not be able to control our own destiny, because we're literally enabling and protecting the most corrupt people in the country and the world with liability immunity. We're getting back wealth inequality, divide and conquer strategies, and we're not gaining ground. So we have to go back to some common sense, because there's so many questions out there regarding economy. This is why I really try hard to balance financial, economic, social, and political rationale. Not just talk about political correctness and how they use it as a tool to divide us and create inequality where the top 1% to 2% and all the money is going to them and the bottom 93% is losing big time. We have to think about all the unknown variables economically, socially, politically, financially. We have to think about, what are they going to print money? Is the Fed going to continue to buy treasuries, which they're connected at the hip with? What's going to happen to the credit market, the bond market? More over leverage. They're going to still monetize debt. What's the interest rates going to do? Derivative market. There's no confidence in the system at all. We have to decide how we're going to live accordingly. We'll be right back. Rich
Scheben's with us. Rich, I've got a couple quick comments I'd like to share with you and the class about, you mentioned generator. And I've noticed that there's a recurring problem that we're having with these small engines. What's happened is the 10% alcohol is destroying the carburetors. Now, here's why it's important. Can you describe for our class what your generator looks like, where you put the gasoline, etc.?
Well, sure. I have a 7,000-watt generator. It's got a 240-volt hookup. So basically, I don't have my 220 or 240 in my cabin. If I need it, I just turn on the generator, and it's a pretty simple way to live. I use the best gasoline. I use the best premium non-ethanol fuel, and I put the fuel in on the top. I would never use, whether it be my UTV, my chainsaw, my wood splitter, my generator, any of my tools, I use this type of gasoline because my tools are basically my way of living. I mean, I cannot, if these tools go down, I cannot live this lifestyle anymore. So that's why I chose to do that. And, when I put gas in my truck, I do use, the low-grade gas because I don't feel as much of a benefit doing this high-grade premium non-ethanol fuel. It's just more expensive. So I try to look at I don't pick a date when I change the oil in my generator. I probably change it, 4 to 6 times a year. And I'm kind of shooting from the hip guessing because I look at the oil, a little bit of the viscosity, more of the color. And that's when I decide to change my oil. I remember a few years ago, Vince, probably about 5 years ago, you asked me how often I change the oil. And I said like 4 to 6 times. And you said, that often. And, I just feel that I would rather, I've been using the same generator for 15 years, and it works great. I have a little bit of a problem here and there that I can get fixed, but for the most part, it's a DeWalt generator, 7,000 watt, but it's got a Honda engine, and we all know that Honda has a great reputation, at least they did. I would like to think they still do. And so I use my generator to pull up water. And I use synthetic oil because I did some research and I found that that's going to give me the best rated performance and shelf life for my particular engine. Now, I have my well is about 250 feet deep, but my static water is only 40 foot. I did not have to go 250. I did the research to find out what's going to give me the best chance if wells start going dry that mine won't, and give me the best quality of water. So that's what I did. And when I turn on my generator to bank amps and voltage into my battery system, I'm also killing multiple birds with one stone because I'm using the water for my critters, for my garden, or for whatever. So that's kind of, I chose to put my cabin in a little valley, a tiny little valley, and so as we all know, water flows downhill. So I'm going to get the best green grass without having to irrigate. So it's more of a dry farming situation, if you want to call it that. Did that explain what you were looking for?
Yeah. The one critical point was the location of the fuel tank of your generator compared to, let's say, where the engine is. So I believe you said that the fuel tank is above the engine. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Here's where I'm going with this. And this little discussion is a preparedness discussion. It's not because I'm a gearhead, but I think it's germane to preparedness. This relates to generators, lawnmowers, rototillers, 4-stroke or 4-cycle engines that are gasoline powered. And what we're finding is that the gasoline, Rich said that he doesn't use the 87 octane, the 10% ethanol blended, forced by the government on you at the gas pump for most vehicles. He's not using that. And because he doesn't use that, he's not quite as susceptible to the problems that I'm going to bring up. And it's going to take me about 2 minutes to discuss this when we come back from the break. I want to do it justice. But I'm going to tell you a very serious condition that is happening with carburetors on these small cylinder, single cylinder engines, and even 2-cylinder engines. We'll be right back. So here's where I was going with this carburetor thing. The alcohol in the gasoline, the 10% alcohol, corrodes the aluminum parts of the carburetor. There are rubber tips, the Viton, V-I-T-O-N, in the needle and seat. That doesn't seem to get corroded. But the casting, the aluminum casting does. And the corrosion clogs up these little orifices, and the carburetor stops functioning properly. Also, the needle and seat gets stuck, and fuel with this corrosion gets past the valving, the needle and seat valving in the carburetor. So if the gas tank is above the carburetor, gravity will pull down the gasoline into the carburetor. That's the way it's supposed to work. Well, the needle and seat leak because of the gasoline-alcohol combination. Now, it didn't happen with just plain old gasoline, but it happens with the alcohol blend in gasoline. So, as the gas leaks past the needle and seat, and which is controlled by the float in the carburetor, that gasoline continues downhill, which is through the carburetor, through the intake port, through the intake valve into the cylinder. Then what happens is, once it's in the cylinder, it gets past the rings of the piston, and it mixes with the engine oil. When it does that, it dilutes the engine oil. Gasoline is not a lubricant. So if the gasoline seeps past the carburetor float, the float system, needle and seat, gets into the cylinder, leaks into the oil crankcase of the engine, and dilutes it, and you start the engine, you will probably destroy the engine within 20 minutes, beyond repair. So how do you know? That's really easy. My advice for our class is to check the engine oil level every single time you start that engine. Lawnmower, rototiller, generator, whatever it may be. Check the oil every time. If you normally keep it to the full mark, which you should, because that engine oil is the coolant. It's the coolant for an air-cooled engine. If you keep it full, to never overfill it, and I'll tell you why. Maybe Kyle and I will talk about that in detail on Thursday. But you never want to overfill the engine oil on a little single-cylinder engine. But what happens is, as the oil gets diluted with the gasoline, the engine oil level gets higher and higher and higher. So if you check the oil and you see, gosh, it's more full than it used to be, that's probably because the carburetor leaked gasoline into the crankcase. So what you need to do is drain out that oil. Don't start it. Drain out that oil completely, refill it with fresh oil. But you'll probably have to put a fuel shutoff valve in the in the gas line between the gas tank and the carburetor. And that's what we do. I mean, we buy them by the 10-pack, and we've got them installed everywhere. And I just installed another one yesterday on our little Troy-built Super Bronco rototiller because it doesn't have a fuel shutoff. And I checked the oil before we went to start it, and sure enough, the oil level was above full because gasoline leaked from the gas tank through the carburetor into the crankcase and mixed with the oil. So I drained out the oil, put a fuel shutoff valve in it. But here's the thing. It's really easy to tell. All you do is when you check the oil, smell the oil. If it smells like gasoline, you can be 100% sure that the engine oil has been contaminated with gasoline. And do not start it. There's always a possibility of a fire. That's one small problem. But the big problem is you're probably going to destroy the engine within 20 minutes. That's something that I've never heard discussed on the air at all. Rich Scheben, any comments?
Well, no, I think that's very accurate. But, I was going to talk about all these different articles, but I'll be honest with you, now that you started talking about off-grid living, I think we should connect a few dots for the people, because I think there's a lot of people really interested in moving to rural America and starting to live off-grid. The information is there, the tools are there. The solar panels, they're like $1 a watt compared to when off-grid living when I first started living off-grid over 13 years ago. I don't know what they were, but they were a heck of a lot more than $1 a watt. Now, there's batteries, there's solar controllers, trimetrics, DC disconnects, inverter chargers, and generators, all to be wired in unison. And Vince talked about the generator. There's also, if you want to make it a little simpler, but a little more expensive, there's a system called Outback, just like the steakhouse. And you can buy all those tools that I just shared with you already wired on like a board, like a particle board or something, and just hook it up to your solar shed and to your system in your home, and you're ready to go. It makes things a lot easier. But I want to, since we're talking about off-grid now, there's so many different types of batteries. You know, I use a very simple deep cycle lead-acid battery. It's called a T105, and it's one of the cheapest batteries. It's probably known as, when people say the golf cart battery, that's probably what the T105 is, okay, the Trojan 105. And it cost me for 12 batteries that are, I have them wired in 3 clumps, if you will, and all connected to each other, and there's 225 amp-hour batteries, so 225 times 3 gives me a 675 amp-hour system. So when you talk about how big somebody's system is, and that is a question that will come up, it's not about how many watts you have on solar panels. It's not you know, volts going in here or going out there. It's basically your storage, your battery storage. That's basically the size of your system. So, and there's many different, there's lithium batteries, there's sealed batteries like AGM, there's silicon salt batteries, there's gel cell batteries, where the electrolyte is not a liquid. There's nickel iron, which are a high density battery. They're a little more expensive, but in northern country like Montana, those batteries should not go below 45 degrees Fahrenheit. So, you know, you have to look at everything. You have to look at your cable sizing. You have to look at, you know, the larger diameter cables, smaller AWG numbers, you know, will have less voltage drop and are more efficient from transferring power to and from the batteries. You have to realize that you can't have cable that's undersized where the diameter is too small, because then you can have an overheating issue, which creates fire danger. Now, people often ask me, how come you've been living off-grid for over 13 years, you're still using the same solar panels? Well, here in the North Country, even though they say solar panels will lose up to approximately 1% of functionality per year, that's not so true here in the North Country. In the southern states, it is, where it's really hot and you have a lot more sun. Here in the North Country, that's not really the case. So you have to think about how many appliances you want for your lifestyle. We chose to live rugged. I've always wanted to do that. We have gravity feed water to my reservoir, which I'm looking at right now on my wood cook stove, and I have another gravity feed where I use water into my sink, and I fill them up about once a month with a garden hose. It takes like an hour. It's about as simple a process as you can get. I don't have to worry about corrosion. I don't have to worry about pipes leaking. I cannot tell you how many stories and how many videos I've seen of people's pipes leak and basically take out their floor, take out their wall, Vince, I'm having a mental blockage. What's that cheap stuff they put on the wall?
Even their ceiling. I got sheetrock. Sheetrock. I got a call from a guy,
brain fart
and
there.
it's
a wick. It's basically a wick.
It was about 20.
What? So
it was about 15, 20 degrees outside. And what happened is this guy had PEX plumbing installed by a contractor, and he installed it in the ceiling. Ran from one end of the house to the other end of the house. It got to 15, 20 degrees outside below freezing, and the pipes broke. And when they broke, full water pressure from the well pump was going into the attic, and it collapsed the ceiling, which was sheetrock. So you're absolutely right. And that was a dumb
my
thing to do.
Sister, she went to Europe one year, and they flushed the toilet, and that 50-cent piece that was supposed to stop the water from coming into the toilet broke or malfunctioned. Whole house got destroyed, and they had to live in a hotel for a while. Then they had to, live in one room for a year. Then, and right now, this is a time of plenty for building, which means contractors and electricians and plumbers are hard to find. And I'm hearing people who, when they have these catastrophes, they try to get these people to come in, and the guy's busy. Now, keep in mind, when it comes to electricians, for those of you who have young children, okay, or even young adults, the best job in the world right now that will keep you in business for the rest of your life, unless they unleash some of the new technology that's out there for energy, for free energy, but they don't want anything free for the little people. That's being an electrician with the skill sets of setting up off-grid homes. I've had several of them here. They're not easy to get. And they said, I asked them this question specifically, how many electricians are trained? And you have to train yourself. There's not a lot of people out there to train you to set up off-grid homes. And the answer was 10%. That means 90% of electricians cannot do the whole job. So you need to do your research. You need to go to, the best way to do it, people, is to go to a battery store. Every county, any decent-sized town has a battery store where you can buy lead-acid batteries. They're going to tell you who sets up off-grid homes. And these people are worth their weight in gold. Okay? These people know their stuff. And I recommend to anybody, and how many articles have I mentioned where China Joe has literally handed over the keys to our electric grid to China, and now pretty much everybody has smart meters on their house where your power and water can be hacked, and shut down by a snap of a finger. Off-grid living is looking pretty good, isn't it, Vince?
Yeah, when you talk about shutting down, that can be done remotely. And one of the benefits that caused the utility companies to switch to smart meters, one of the benefits to them, not to you, but to the utility companies, was they can shut down your electricity remotely at the click of a mouse. And what I'm talking about is, let's say your bill is in arrears. It can be shut down. There's no guy that comes out that you can confront. All of a sudden your electricity gets shut off. Or it can be an accident. Or it can be a computer running amok and just shuts down whoever. So you're absolutely right. And now in our case, if they shut us down, it's okay. I just go and throw a switch and we're off grid. It's as simple as that. And, last night I had a refresher course with the family. I called everybody and I said, okay, just want to go over this with you. I want to show you how these switches work, what they do. And I do that, on a regular basis. So even though it's written down, even though there are labels on the switches, I want to make sure everybody knows what to do, because when the electricity fails, it's a problem. It's a problem for anybody. So, I just want to mention that I bought a carburetor for that Troy-built rototiller. It's $10 and change, shipped from eBay. So, class, carburetors for these single-cylinder engines are very inexpensive. They come from China. And regardless of the price you pay, you're probably going to get a Chinese one anyway. So, you can go to eBay and find yours. I bought one for $10 and change, shipped. And it's for that Troy-built Super Bronco 6-horsepower rototiller. So I bought spare carburetors for a whole bunch of equipment, and the problem is the carburetors are being destroyed by the alcohol in the fuel. We don't have a gas station that sells premium alcohol-free fuel anywhere near here. It's a 50-mile round trip for us to go get it, so we typically use the 10% government mandated lousy gasoline. And when I was growing up, we didn't have problems like this with carburetors. And Rich doesn't, because he's able to get the premium alcohol-free fuel. So if you're using that 87 octane unleaded regular, you're probably going to have the problems that I've mentioned. And make sure you check the oil level every single time you start that lawnmower, rototiller, etc. Okay? Because you're going to find one of these times that the oil level is high, and that's because the gasoline has contaminated the oil. Do not run it. You'll destroy the engine. Okay? And Rich, can you talk about the procedure that you use when you change the oil on your generator? Do you change the engine oil when the generator is hot, cold? What is your procedure?
What I will do is when I have to run my generator, like when I'm watering the cabin, and I use that in quotes, or if I'm watering the critters, or if I'm watering, which usually happens when I water the cabin, or if I'm watering the garden So when I use the generator for a semi-lengthy period of time, basically at least a half an hour, so the viscosity of the oil is thinner and if the generator is hotter, then I will unplug and just let it drain out. And then I will put the new quart of oil and my tools in front of the generator. So next time I go to the generator, I know not to start it, but I give it, plenty of time for all the old oil to drip out. And I've been doing that for 15 years. It works. And, you want to get every drop of that old oil out of there. And, it's really simple. It's just like people say running off of batteries is not simple, Vince. I'll be honest with you. These T105s I have cost me $1,500 for 12 batteries. I mean, $1,500. I mean, you could spend that in a weekend, going to restaurants. I mean, there's a little bit of work with these unsealed batteries. You got to check electrolytes and put distilled water in. Maybe in the wintertime, I hardly do it at all. In fact, probably not. It's more of a, late spring, summer, early fall phenomenon when I have to put in distilled water, and I check maybe every 3 weeks. I don't even check specific gravity readings anymore. People say you need a hydrometer. I've been living off grid so many years. It's just like old hat. I don't even need to do it. I just make sure my electrolyte levels are up to par, and I fully charge my batteries every 7 to 8 days. And I have a battery temperature sensor installed on my inverter, and that sits between the batteries and the port, which is plugged into the inverter. And this sensor extends my battery life by preventing overcharging in warm temperatures and undercharging in cold temperatures. It's really pretty simple. And during the winter months, undercharging can be an issue, so you got to worry about sulfation. And this is why you have to equalize your batteries and make about every 60 to 80 days. And basically that means that you're cooking your batteries so you can have your rates of charge and everything works better, so you have a better capacity and less decrease or deterioration over time. And I try really hard to make sure that when I equalize my batteries and I fill it up every 6, 7, 8 days, that I not go below 80% of full. Now, if you had silicon salts, if you had nickel iron, if you have some of the newer lithium batteries, you don't have to worry about that, but they're more expensive. And keep in mind, when you fill up your batteries here in Montana, we have about 3 months out of the year. We have low light, and we have a lot of clouds during those winter months. So I have to supplement with my AC generator. And when you have a small system, think of it as a glass of water. A glass of water is a small, container you can pick up. So if you have to fill it up every 6, 7, 8 days, it's a lot easier compared to, let's say, if you have a 5-gallon bucket. And look at that in your amp hour as the size of your system. It's more difficult to fill up. So I try not to go below 80%. I'll get into more detail with that after the break. We'll be right back, folks. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah. Now we're talking about the solar systems and what it's like living with them. And when we top off our electrolyte with distilled water, we use about 10 gallons at a time. So every couple of months we use about 10 gallons. So that's something to consider. Where would you get the distilled water? So we have it on hand, and we have a generator to make distilled water. We'll be right back. So during the news, I heard that U.S. consumer confidence surges to a 1-year high. If you think that you should follow that advice, I suggest you think again. Consumer confidence. Consumers, they're like the lowest common denominator. Those are people who consume. They don't make, they consume. Okay? So I would suggest that you think very carefully about the wording that is used. Consumer confidence. I would equate a consumer with the GDP. That's what I would, the generally dumb public. Rich, any comments?
Well, focus groups and polls are purposely done to manipulate people's thought. It's 100% fake. It's 100% phony. I mean, how many examples have we given about stock buybacks and central bank printing money out of thin air and welfare for the rich? I know I've given probably 1,000 examples myself about that. Everything is fake. Everything's phony. Everything is corrupt. And everything is used as a tool to divide, distract, and dumb down the American people. And I am blue in the face discussing the thousands of examples I've used. I've talked about how they use professional wordsmithing and subliminal messages in movies and sitcoms. I cannot tell you how many times I've quoted Marx, the Communist Manifesto, Alinsky, Cloward and Piven in the Frankfurt School. They have a template, they have a blueprint, they have a playbook, they have a flow chart for the destruction of America. That's why they race bait. That's why they segregate us into race and gender and the gender you identify as and your sex, your religion, your so-called ideology. They're attacking generations. They're manufacturing perception, pity, guilt. They're swaying public opinion with 5 corporations. 5. That control all the mainstream media, the publishing companies, the production companies. Their job is to literally take the narratives and take your brain and brainwash you. This is why we're the divided groups of America. This is why they use terms like a group identity politics. This is why they want to take certain groups and insult their work ethic, their ability, and their intelligence, which degrades and disrespects them purposely, not for empowering a nation, but lowering the bars of standards and expectations for a job. You know, it's just like how they call Donald Trump, oh, he's a Nazi. Well, it's the same people who are calling him a Nazi who are the authoritarians who are practicing tyranny, dictatorships, totalitarian fascism. They're the ones that want to control everything, control the media. They don't want citizen journalists. They don't want due process. They don't want parents controlling schools and their curriculum. They're anti-parent, anti-homeschool, everything. You know, they're pro people they can pay off and manipulate and blackmail. People like the courts, the lawyers, the judges, who are literally willing to sell out the people under the guise of justice. The people who want to create voter fraud. And, you know, I can't tell how many times, Vince, have I said things like we're literally living the consequences of decades of inaction towards political correctness. When I say these things, I give examples. And I use math. I use trends. I use published articles in the public domain. I don't make this stuff up. So people, if you believe anything that comes out of any institution, whether it be American or national, that includes the UN, the World Health Organization, I've given so many examples, I can't even count them anymore. You have to do your own reading, your own research. Don't even verify anything we say and check, okay? You have to do it. And if you refuse to do it, you're not empowering your nation. You're not empowering yourself. You think you're going to buy time and stay in the shadows and no one's going to come after you. Well, that's not the case. Because we're at the point in America because no one came to save other groups, and they're not going to come and save you. This is why we have to realize and identify what political correctness is. If you know anybody drinking the Kool-Aid of political correctness, after all these articles, published articles in the public domain talking about vaccine safety and efficacy, talking about no proof about masks and how it's so deteriorating to your health, physiological, psychological, the whole works, then you're not paying attention. So when you hear anything that's trying to turn your opinion and funnel you into a direction, do not believe it. In fact, you're better off believing the exact opposite. Vince?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Rich, I was thinking about gardening. You were talking about self-sufficiency during the first hour of today's broadcast. And I was thinking about gardening. Can you share with us how you start your seeds for your garden? You start them indoors. How do you do that? What is your procedure? And I'll share with the class if there are any differences in the way we do it. And probably aren't too many differences other than the fact that maybe we use more artificial light. But go ahead.
Yeah. I look at gardening as a recreational necessity, and that's how I define it. And I don't use one word. It's a three-letter word often enough, and that is fun. This is all fun. Self-sufficient lifestyle, gardening, edible and medicinal plant harvesting, hunting, fishing, living off-grid, taking care of animals. Is it work to some people? Yes, but it's also fun. So what I try and do is try to eliminate GMO foods that we know it causes cancer and organ failure and changes our DNA. So we have to create a system that was specially created for us to combat the health benefits for us. We are never the beneficiaries of anything good. So this is why we have to decentralize, and I use organic, wide row, raised bed gardening, and when I start my seeds, Vince, I start it by the wood cook stove, because you do not need sunlight or a grow lamp. You can do it. A lot of people do. I leave my seeds by the wood cook stove, and as soon as they poke their little heads out, then I put them in the solarium, and I heat my solarium from ordinary convection from the garden. And I use raised beds because in my greenhouse and for my cold crops outside, because it raises the temperature sooner for earlier germination, quicker growth, and this way I don't have to worry about my nutrients and moisture leaching out as it would on regular gardens. Now, where Vince lives in Missouri, you don't need it because they have longer months without frost. Here in Montana, we have to think outside the box a little bit, but I want to avoid heavy metals. And I basically make my own soil out of compost from goat, chicken, when we have turkeys, when we, the straw in the garden. So nothing goes to waste here. Every banana peel, radish top, coffee ground, tomato stem goes into the garden. And I recommend everybody to build the cheapest greenhouse in the world. I've given a lot of tours here on that. I basically built a ridgepole and put cattle paneling fencing over it. It's a stout fencing. It's about 4-ish feet high, 16 feet long, and I combined two like you would clasp your hands, okay? Over the ridgepole, a little wire, because wire has memory, doesn't need much, and then put your UV-treated plastic over it. And for $500, I built I call it my old jalopy, but it works, a greenhouse for $500 that's about 40 feet long. 40 feet. So anybody could do it, and I remember I do chores often during the commercials, so I don't hear everything, but I remember hearing somebody talking about the term heirloom seeds. Do not buy anything with the fake terminology like natural. Buy heirloom or open pollinated seeds. So you could not only get better quality, better nutrition, but you can use that seed as future crop for future generations of that particular plant. Now, I'm going to give you a website. It's from Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds, and it's www.rareseeds.com. And I'm going to give you two others that I haven't been to lately. I don't know if they're still in existence, but one is called Seeds of Change, and that's seedsofchange.com. And another one is called Native Seed Search, and that's native seeds, and that's plural, .org. So I would try those three. I know rareseeds.com is still going, and they seem to be a pretty credible outfit. But if you're going to any store, any Walmart, to buy seeds, okay, you're going to be getting the Monsanto type seeds. Okay, the Monsantos, they want to eliminate, they want to bring in GMO, They want to eliminate nutrition. They want you to buy their products, their poison products, to use often on their products. So you need to think about the chemical companies who are literally buying up GMO research and distribution to the people under the guise of some benevolent name. Don't be fooled. You got to do your research on all these companies that have turned for the purpose of depopulation, for the purpose of feathering their own nest, for the purpose of giving no vitamins and minerals to you. And that's why we have to get back to self-sufficiency and do it yourself. Vince?
Yeah, and I was thinking about starting these seeds, and here's what we do. I found some styrofoam cups that were left over, and from a project that we had. And there were the 6-ounce size and probably the 12-ounce size. And I thought, this is perfect for starting seeds. So I took an AWL. It's like a screwdriver, but it's got a point on it instead of a screw tip. And I poked a hole about, let's say a quarter of an inch from the bottom on the side, but a quarter of an inch from the bottom of each cup, one hole. And that's to let the water drain out. Then I put them on a large commercial cookie sheet, one of these aluminum cookie sheets that we use in the automotive shop for, catching oil and things like that. I washed it up, and I put all these cups on these cookie sheets. And then I filled them with, potting soil. And I wrote on each one the date that I filled it and put the seed in it, started the seeds on that specific date, and wrote what kind of seed was in each cup. So whether it was burpee, heirloom seeds, or whatever the brand of seeds were, or whether we saved them from a previous planting, I wrote on each cup what is in the cup. And the reason I like the styrofoam cups, at least now I do, is because I can rip them apart without damaging the roots when I go to plant them. We'll be right back. So, class, what we do here at the farm, at least this year we're doing this, and we're experimenting, seeing which seeds grow. And so I've got all these seed packets from many, many years ago. Some are 10 years old, some are older than that. And I want to see what grows inside before we plant in the garden. So even seeds that we're going to sow, I want to know if they're going to germinate. I don't want to waste the garden space because it's too valuable. I don't want to plant seeds that aren't going to grow. So I'm testing them inside, and I'm using these 6.4-ounce styrofoam cups. So what do they cost? Well, at Sam's Club, you can buy these styrofoam cups for 1,000 of them for $26.34 for the 6-ounce size. It's a little less expensive for the 4-ounce size, a little more if you get a larger size. But what I'm trying to say is I like the idea of styrofoam because I can write on the side of the cup exactly what's in it. And of course, I poke a hole in the bottom, a quarter of an inch from the bottom of the cup, so that the water will drain out. So I'll have good drainage. And I'm using potting soil, and I'm using fluorescent lighting because we don't have a really good location, and we don't have a greenhouse yet for starting seeds. So I'm starting them under the fluorescent tubular lights. A shop light kind of a light, except I started with a shop light with 2 tubes, and I put one cool white and one grow light. So one is kind of a warm white color, the other is kind of a bluish color, and that would balance the lighting spectrum. And then I decided I was going to change that. I bought a used what's called a suspended ceiling type light. It has 3 tubes in it, and I bought 3 new fluorescent tubes called Daylight. Now that's 6,500 degrees Kelvin, and these little plants love it. So I've done a little research. No one really knows exactly what the best color is, but the grow lights are more toward the warm spectrum, the reddish, soft white. And the plants seem to really like the Daylight spectrum, which is called 6,500 degree Kelvin. So I can't find anything wrong with the 6,500 degree Kelvin, but what I'm probably going to do is buy one more tube. So I'll have this fixture has 3 fluorescent tubes. It's 4 feet long. I'll have 2 6,500 degree, bluish spectrum and one tube in the center, which will be the warmer spectrum, which will be the red spectrum. So I'm going to experiment with that. But right now, it's 3 tubes of 6,500 degree Kelvin, and they like it. The plants like it. So what I want to do is tell you very quickly about fluorescent lighting nomenclature, the American system. So there's the T5, T8, T12. What does that stand for? Well, it's an eighth of an inch. So these are fluorescent tubes, long tubes, cylindrical tubes. T12 is the old standard. That would be 12/8 of an inch, or 1.5 inches in diameter. Next size down would be T8. That would be 8/8, or 1 inch in diameter. Then there's the T5, which is a slimmer tube, which is 5/8 of an inch in diameter. So T12, 1.5 inches, T8, 1 inch, T5, 5/8 of an inch. Then some other nomenclature is WW for warm white, CW, cool white, D, daylight, N, natural, WWX is warm white deluxe, CWX is cool white deluxe, and then of course BLB is black light. So that is the basic nomenclature for fluorescent lighting. So I really like the standard T12 because that's 1.5 inches in diameter. Now they use a little more electricity, but that's what we do, and we keep and we also are experimenting with the T5s. And, the T5s and the T8s. So take a look at, the wattage, and you'll find out that the larger diameter uses more wattage. And we're growing our plants with about 88 watts, 3 4-foot fluorescent tubes of, T5. So think about that, and it seems to be working great. And I don't think it's too late to start plants. Even though it's a little late, I don't think it's too late. So potting soil, get the seeds that are heirloom seeds, as Rich recommended, because if you get them, you can save the seeds and you'll never have to buy seeds again, as long as you save them properly. And you can learn how to do that. That's all over the internet. So those are my thoughts. And then I'm going to plant them, and I'm going to mark in the garden, raised bed garden, exactly what's in what hole. And I'm going to watch them. And I'm going to monitor it very carefully so that we can save the seeds, see what grows, what doesn't grow. And what grows will continue. What doesn't grow, we're not going to continue with that. Rich, any quick comments?
Well, yeah, think about what we're teaching our kids and grandkids today. Push buttons, manage paper, be politically correct. Teach them things that really matter. On how to defend, make our immune system stimulate better and be healthier.
Yep, we'll be right back. If you'd like to find out about his book, it's on Amazon. One New York Man's Journey to Off-Grid Living in Montana. I have the book. I've read it. And mine has lots of yellow highlights in it. And I didn't used to do that. I would, I would never highlight in a book. But you know what? Now I do. And my books are among my most prized possessions. And I'm talking about books that were written by USA Preparedness instructors. Those are the ones I really care about. And I have Rich Scheben's book. So you may want to get it. It's on Amazon. And you can see a picture of his cabin and how he lives. And it's great. It's a great book if you're interested in pursuing this lifestyle. So, Rich, I have a question for you. You mentioned that you have been giving tours. Now, I don't give tours anymore. I used to, but I don't do that anymore. I don't let people on the farm, and when they, I just don't do it. But when people come to visit you and they're there for the first time, can you share with us, if you want to, what are they interested in learning? What is there a common thread that runs through, groups of these visitors? What do they want to know about? What are they thirsty to learn about? And is there a common thread?
Well, everybody thinks a little differently. That's why, when you visit an off-grid home, I visited probably 200 of them, and everybody does it slightly different. Some people want to show up for the gardening tips and boost their immune system. For those of you who take any synthetic pharmaceutical drugs regarding inflammation, circulation, allergies, infections, detoxification, cancers, and tumors, well, that's what a garden does. So people like to see things about gardening. Some people like to learn about hunting and fishing. Some people about animals. Probably mostly, I would say, about off-grid living because they can see the corruption and the ill health. I mean, just look, I mentioned Monsanto a few moments ago. Just think of what's one of their products, their ingredient in Roundup, glyphosate. So just some of the things it's linked to. Here's a short list. Stomach and bowel problems, indigestion, ulcers, colitis, gluten intolerance, sleeplessness, lethargy, depression, Crohn's disease, allergies, obesity, infertility, liver disease, renal failure, autism, Alzheimer's, endocrine disruption, and the World Health Organization recently announced glyphosate is a carcinogen. And now I think they're doing their job to make sure that we are not healthy, with these vaccines. Talk about corruption. Let me just mention a few articles here, Vince, and I'll get back to your question with more of a direct answer. Because I obviously didn't get to any of the news. First article is news as new migrant crisis deepens, Biden administration tells the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, to hide the numbers from the people. That's corruption. Jen Psaki claims ignorance of Hunter Biden's $3.5 million payment from Moscow's mayor wife. That's corruption. FBI and DHS attempt to recruit a former Green Beret to infiltrate and spy on Oath Keepers and Proud Boys. But it was recorded, so they can't deny it after the recording came out. Corruption. Next, cover up for Hunter and Haley Biden after a gun was thrown into a trash can behind the grocery store near a school by Haley. And, of course, who came to the rescue? The Secret Service. Corruption. Next, penalties for lying on an ATF background check from Hunter Biden. He should get jail time and fines. What's happening to him? Nothing. Corruption. Hotel bill is $400 per night per illegal that you're paying for. Corruption. Arizona town declares state of emergency over illegal immigrants. Corruption. Biden administration urges Supreme Court to let cops enter homes and seize guns without a warrant. Anti-Second Amendment, anti-Fourth Amendment. Oh, my God, anti-everything amendment. Look, even our own Supreme Court literally just denied a bid by Judicial Watch to require Hillary Clinton to testify under oath about her emails, which she was going to do under the Trump administration. Corruption, hypocrisy, double standards. People, I've got articles here about border surge expected to last more than 7 months. Titanic surge, 42 million Latin Americans want to sneak into the U.S. I'll tell you right now, Texas is cooked. Arizona, New Mexico, California, they're done. Take them off the map, put a fork into them. And then I've got articles showing that Joe Biden is literally shipping people in buses and planes around the United States of America with tons of disease, not being vetted. I've got articles here that show that little girls and sometimes boys are being raped and murdered. I've got so much of them. So much. Obviously, we went to a tangent today, Vince. This is why people want to hear Plan Bs. I said a few of these articles. I have hours worth of articles. All these people dying from the vaccine, all these immune disorders, all these neurological disorders popping up. I've got so much, I don't even know where to start. People want to move rural. They want to move to the country. They want to relearn those old 19th century skills. We have offered nothing but political and social indoctrination to our youth. We have not taught them any skill sets at all. We've taught them how to be angry. We've unlearned and devolved into them the ability to debate and think for themselves. They have been groomed and cultivated to be followers. And people want to know what to do. They see that the rule of law has been delegitimized. Work has been delegitimized. Liability, delegitimized. Nothing makes sense anymore. We see that free lunch is going to the elite, and the bottom 93% are losing ground. You think that's why I talked about the Fed coin and the stimulus earlier broadcast, because you have to look at the true underlying purposes and objectives of what they're doing. This is just to postpone poverty, not to change it. Okay? I gave a short list before we got into it, and then we kind of delved into off-grid living here. But that's okay, as long as we're giving information to the people. But when people come here, Vince, they either heard me give a talk or heard me on the radio or read my book. And, it's hard to turn some folks down. I try to vet people for their authenticity the best I can. And I gave a talk here locally last week, and we took a subset of those and brought them out here. And people want information. They can see what's happening. They are scared. There's no trust in government. There's no trust in our Federal Reserve note, even though it's gotten some upticks lately, which is all done purposely. And you can see gold and silver going down and crypto going up, because maybe is crypto a training ground for the new centralized Fed coin crypto? Possibly. Is crypto going up because maybe there is a backdoor into Bitcoin and it's not as decentralized as people think? Maybe. I don't know. The whole system is so corrupt, and that's why people are buying houses and land, is because by the end of the summer, there may not be any 20-acre parcels or bigger left, because people want some land. They want to have fuel, which is trees. They want to have garden space, space for animals, a little elbow room and privacy. They want a life, and they can see they're not going to get it in urban, suburban America in the cookie-cutter follower subdivision platform. So people want information because they haven't been taught anything, especially the lower 2 to 3 generations. That's why I said if you want a good job, and you don't have to be a male to be an electrician, become an electrician and learn how to set up off-grid homes. You want to do something that's benevolent? To me, that is one of the most benevolent offerings that you could do for the American people, because the American people don't know what to do and they don't know how to do it. That's why this show offers some ideas and solutions in different aspects of preparedness. And we talk about finance, economy, social, political, and we especially talk about how we're all of us being distracted, dumbed down, and divided. We're letting the elite hold on to the narratives and control our thought. We have to do something about that. That's why we got to go back to basics, okay? We have to go back to food, water, shelter, and energy. We have to get out of debt. We got to buy land. Now, I think one of the reasons people are buying land so much right now in houses, because they feel very low confidence in the purchasing power of the Federal Reserve note. So they feel if they can lock into traditional, even though there's been a short uptick in the 10-year interest rate, which is more closely related to the mortgage rates, people feel, from what I'm hearing, a very lack of confidence in the Federal Reserve note and how long we're going to hold on to the world reserve currency and how long they're going to monetize debt, all the things you hear me talk about. And I think people are saying, well, maybe if I lock in now and buy that land or home, maybe I can pay that lender back in chicken feed because of the U.S. dollar being potentially worthless. I don't have a crystal ball. It's all speculation. But I think a lot of people have that in the back of their mind. But when they come here, Vince, they want ideas and solutions. They want outside-the-box ideas. And people are getting tired of just talking about outside-the-box ideas. They want to start living outside-the-box ideas. Vince?
Okay, so while you were talking about this and talking about being an electrician, here's a great way to start. For $4.38, you can learn what I learned about wiring a home by going to eBay. And there's a book called The Black & Decker Complete Guide to Home Wiring. The Black & Decker Complete Guide to Home Wiring. $4.38 shipped. Total cost $4.38. It's going to be used. I bought mine used. And it has everything you need to know about how to wire your home. It's a lot of pages. It's a soft cover. Let me see how many pages mine is. 334 pages. It's a large book. It's got a lot of pictures on virtually every page. $4.38. Now, if you miss that one, the next one's $5.99. If you miss that one, the next one is, there's another one for $4.38. So I suggest you jump on that and buy it. And that's on eBay. And, you'll be able to, if you're careful and you pay attention, you'll be able to replace switches, receptacles, wire subpanels, run, new circuits. You'll learn how to do it all, right? Be careful, pay attention, do it safely, but it's in the book. And you can read it cover to cover. Spend, several hours, read it cover to cover, and you'll have a lot of information about home wiring. That's one thing. Next thing is, Rich, when you give these tours, do people come away with, wow, I don't have to pay a homeowners association fee. I won't have to have an electric bill. I won't have to have a water bill. I won't have the high taxes because farmland is taxed way lower than residential land. Do they come away with those thoughts?
They do, but they also, a big percentage of them say, wow, this is a cool adventure life. I would love to do it. But they're also saying, wow, it's a lot of work. But it really is fun, folks. It really is fun.
All I do is have fun. That's all I do. Rich, seriously, when I think about it, all I do is have fun. I mean, I've been retired since 1989. I haven't had a job really since then. And, I was a consultant for the school system because I wanted to do that. But, like you, all I do is have fun. Now, the only time I don't have fun is when an animal is sick, or someone's sick in the family, or one of the animals dies. That's the only time we don't have fun. But, or when a person dies. Other than that, life here at the Finelli farm is fun. If I feel like working on my old truck, I go work on my old truck. If I feel like not doing that, if I want to watch the Rockford Files and learn something about the 70s, I'll do that. If I want to watch Combat or Jericho or one of the assignments that I've made here on USA Prepares, I'll do that. I do whatever I want to do. But some people think that, I'm a workaholic, and maybe I am. But to me, it's not work because it's just a bunch of hobbies that I'm interested in, and that's what I do. So to me, taking a transmission out, yeah, it's heavy, it's hard, yeah, but it's fun to me. And making an improvement on an engine or a vehicle, that's fun. Fixing a rototiller, that's fun. Now, some people might find that drudgery. I don't. So, even changing the oil on your generator, that's not really work. It's kind of it's just fun, right? I mean, what else are you going to do?
And Vince, let me answer your question with a little more sidebar here that you asked me right before the break. Think about folks that the red dye in today's meat's made with bioreactors, 3D printers, meat grown in lab, hormones, steroids, antibiotics, estrogen mimickers, GMOs, modifying proteins and enzymes and gluten and everything, and things processed for shelf life in the field and in the can, destroying your gut, compromising nutrition. Think about when I talk about, and I've spent many, many hours talking about finance and economy. Think about what these words mean anymore. Earnings, price discovery, liquidity, solvency, even inflation and deflation. Most people don't even know what's going on. Fundamentals, fair value, the leverage, GDP, what the heck is that anymore? Credit, debt, core businesses of corporations, money printing, free market, supply and demand, lack of velocity of money. What's profits mean anymore? Everything is fixed and phony. And the reason why I said that is we have to go back to a penny saved, penny earned mentality. And having a little hobby farm kind of offers that. Remember, I spent also a lot of time on the agenda. Forced austerity, delegitimizing work and eliminating free markets and supply and demand, big tech controlling everything, increased depression and domestic violence, eliminating voting legitimacy. Everything is rigged. Eliminating our Constitution, freedom, liberty, rule of law, food shortage, starvation, eugenics, genocide, war. depopulation, eliminating all free speech, forced lockdowns, house arrest, electromagnetic radiation, destroying the people everywhere with 5 and 6G towers. I mean, I can go on and on and on. The divide and conquer strategies. You see so many people so dumbed down. They are literally concentrated on protecting their group, their hyphen, and their pronoun, and not putting America first. So if you think that this lifestyle is not for you, I want you to think again. Because I don't see any other choice. When now that we live in a society where hard work, effort, proven results, and qualifications no longer matter, the rule of law no longer matters. I mean, I was prepared with tons of news and articles today, but I just mentioned, a little over half a dozen maybe, because I wanted to show you the corruption, the hypocrisy, the double standards of the elite. They don't care about your group. They don't care about your nutrition. They don't care about your prosperity. They want to create an illusion to consolidate power, money, and control. That's what they do. And how are you going to control your own destiny with everything that's being done to cover up elite crimes and take you down at the same time? What options do you have? And that's why people are coming to rural America and buying acreage, and that's why we recommend 20 to 40 acres. And if you can't buy it yourself, Vince and I are both blue in the face trying to help people talk about other options. Go to meetings. Go to, put signs up on your bulletin boards in your community. Say, hey, I want to buy a piece of land. Let's get together with like-minded individuals. It could be friends. It could be relatives. And trade skill sets. Cross-train. Think about how you can buy a piece of land with multiple people, create the lifestyle, train yourself, and then sell it as a working hobby for them, maybe 5 years down the road. That's just one idea. Vince, thanks for having me.
Rich, thanks for being with us and sharing your expertise and knowledge. And class, it really isn't that hard, but you have to start. And you can. You really can. And consider Rich's book, One New York Man's Journey to Off-Grid Living in Montana. It's on Amazon. Rich, thanks so much. See you next week.
Thank you. You bet.